Welcome. This meeting is being live streamed today, and I'll just point you to also that all of the information, including a more recent document, has been loaded onto the hub as well for you to access. So all bits of information are there. We are going to start with an opening karakia, and I'm going to attempt it myself. And I've got a lisp, so anything that I mispronounce is because of my lisp at the moment with my false tooth, not because I'm hopeless at it. But anyway, we'll give it a crack. Tēnei mātou he karakia hira, he ka whinga I ngā whakatanga I ngā tikanga, ki uta ki tai kia rira I ngā iwi katoa hiratonga, hu mai hui e tae ki e. And it is, here I am, here we are, your councillors, the bearers of sound decision-making power, reaching inland and coastal to uplift all people of Hiratonga. Bring forth unity, 'tis done. I stole it off Northland. Also, I'd just like to welcome anyone that is zooming in today to this meeting, and also to our guests. And I think there's one. Thank you, Richard, for attending, and we will get to your item on the agenda very shortly. There are apologies from Councillor Nepi and also Councillor Buddo, and also we have a leave of absence from Councillor Michael Fowler, who is also the Deputy Chair of this committee, and he has also put in some questions that have been answered, and he's very happy with the responses to those. He has my back when it comes to the financials, so it was important for him to check those, run his eyes over everything as the governance accountant expert in governance for us. So confirmation of last minutes, well, there aren't any. This is the first meeting of the triennium, and I think it is the first, it's definitely the first standing committee meeting of the two standing committees, formal ones, and I think the only subcommittee meetings that have been formal have been Councillor Dixon. So we're underway, we're now on a roll for the rest of the year. Buckle up. Okay, so no confirmation, so nothing needed to be passed there. I'd like
you want the apologies moved?
Oh, yes, please, thank you. Excuse me. Oh, yes, Councillor Jessup. Oh, Councillor Hickey.
So I'd like to seek leave of absence from the 8th of April to the 17th of April.
Thank you. And Councillor Jessup.
Mine's
Okay, thank you. Can I have someone move the...
One more.
Oh, one more.
Over here.
Right, yep.
Leave of absence, Chair, 25th of May, and for the 24th of September to the 31st of October, both days inclusive, please.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey. You got to sort your light on? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Dixon. Thank you. All in favour? Oh, sorry, seconded by Councillor Sholem. All in favour? Aye. Any against? Moved. Thank you. Right, we will now get into the main part of the meeting. I'll take conflicts of interest as they, if any, arise. But if we just move through to the performance and monitoring introduction report, which is item 5 on your agenda, which is just a brief introduction really around current state of play where we've got to, based on the fact of that this is the first performance and monitoring meeting of the triennium, which has also been impacted quite significantly through the cyclone and subsequent matters arising from that. So thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, you summed it up. Chair, I think so really it is just noting that this committee meeting and the agenda has been impacted by the cyclone and the efforts of staff in responding to that. So, ordinarily you would have the quarterly performance and monitoring report covering all the activities of council putting that imposition on staff while they were responding to the cyclone was deemed to be a little bit much. So we will pick that up again and bring that to the next committee meeting. This is normally a meeting as well where you receive a number of statement of intents, half-year reports from our outside organisations. Unfortunately, with Hawke's Bay Airport and Foodies, both the chairs and the chief executive are unavailable to attend this, so we'll just reschedule that for another time. At the request of the chair, one of the pieces of information that that is normally in the middle of the performance and monitoring report is just that that information around building consent process. So we've just put that in there for information, and yeah, if there's any questions on that, we can attempt to answer it.
Thank you, Bruce. And just adding to that, we have gone through the performance and monitoring quarterly report, and just to look at how that can be refined also moving forward. So that's not to say that the information will be significantly different, but there will be, and some items will probably be a deeper dive than what there has been in the past, and that includes just that building consent area as well. So rest assured there are particular things that are on our action list for the year that we will be taking a closer look at and bringing forward to these meetings. Thank you. So can I have someone move the performance and monitoring introduction report, please? Thank you, Simon. There was a hand for that, and seconded by Councillor Sholem. All in favour? Any against? Moved, and look forward to that morning tea. I think it's about number 5 we're waiting for now. Okay, we're now item 6, which is the Hawke's Bay Museums Trust half-year report, financial report, to the end of December, and I'd just like to welcome Dr. Richard Grant to the front table, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation to come along for our half-yearly report. Can I just say a couple of things before I start? One is personal. I just don't know whether the word is thank or congratulate the HDC, their councillors and the staff for their reaction to Cyclone Gabrielle. I just want you to know that at least one ratepayer thinks you did a great job. So thank you for that. The second is slightly connected, which is, as chairman of the trust, the devastation caused by Cyclone Gabrielle makes it even more important that we get the storage centre in Hastings up and running and operational. By chance, nothing in the museum's collection was touched by Cyclone Gabrielle. And the MTG building itself is fine, and the storage centre, the temporary storage centre, suffered no damage. But you could imagine what would have happened had the water flows that we had seen in various parts of Hawke's Bay gone through the storage centre. With $31 million worth of taonga stored in it, we wouldn't have been looking at a very particularly attractive circumstance. Thirdly, the trust, like all bodies like your own, have been affected by the disruption caused by COVID and by the cyclone. We only just got our half-yearly report finished last Thursday. Our audit for the year by Audit New Zealand was finished in December. So we are operating slightly behind the pace that is normally stipulated by legislation and council regulation. So I'm sure you'll bear with us for that. And then finally, and I'm obviously open to taking questions, The trust is moving ahead in a very conservative way as we continue to work in the joint working group chaired by Councillor Dixon to make sure that we get the best possible outcome both for the storage centre and in conjunction with that for the new governance model for the trust. So we have been pretty conservative. We've spent very little money. We have acquired in the last 6 weeks some remarkable photographs of the earthquake that were being auctioned in New York. And we have bought about 30 of them. They're very interesting because, amongst other things, they show parts of Hawke's Bay that are not in the collection. And we have much more photographic record through this acquisition of Maori in outermost parts of the earthquake. So a very lucky acquisition for us, but it will undoubtedly add to the local knowledge of the earthquake and its aftermath. So with those introductory remarks, Mr. Chairman, I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please? Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Richard. As you commented, this is retrospective and somewhat delayed. I'm just wondering if I can ask questions about the future.
Sure.
With the highly anticipated move of the storage to the new storage site, do you anticipate there being increased expenses for the trust to be operating? And have you got plans in place to meet those increased costs? Straight in.
As they say. Sorry, yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, what the trust is doing is working in the joint working group to produce a new model of governance, which will also be a new model of finance. I mean, what we have to do when we get the storage centre up and running is have a financial, administrative and governance model that enables councils, both Napier and Hastings, to be absolutely clear where their financial responsibilities lie, but also to make it clear to the new trust management, because there will be a new trust management, how much money they are going to have to raise. So my view, I mean, this has not yet gone through the joint working group, but my view is that you will have a basic funding model which involves both councils, and that the trust itself will be able, with much more facility, to go out and raise money and collect corporate sponsorship, and will actually run the museum, the storage centre, as one operation. At present, the trust is not able to generate very much income of its own, but like other bodies around the country, I think under new management that should change.
Thank you. Councillor Redstone.
Thank you, Richard. Just have a question on the current trustees. We've got Tanya Wright from NCC and she's not anymore, and George Lyons from HDC. And
Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, bring that forward. I was just asking a question about the current list of trustees. It's listed as Tanya Wright, Napier City Council, and George Lyons, Hastings District Council. They're no longer trustees?
That just refers to the fact that they are the representatives nominated by the council.
I see. So
it doesn't mean to say that we think that they're still councillors,
No,
because I know they're not.
but that is the current list.
Yeah, that's the current list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Jessup.
Kia ora, Richard. I'm a new councillor and it really helps me understand what the sort of mahi that you are there for and helping us with. My question is, like, you know, when things come up that are relevant to the history of, like you just said the earthquake. How do you just meet as trustees and put together a pūtea to go and bid for those collections, what you just told us?
Okay,
I'm just trying to understand it.
so.
Sorry, can I just jump in for a second? When you're speaking, can you please speak into your microphones and just make sure they are a little bit closer, because even I can't hear them that well here. Thank you.
Okay, so acquisitions policy is determined by the trust. And within the very limited budget that we have, the director of the museum comes to the trustees and says there is something that we wish to acquire that will be fit in with the collection, and we then consider whether we have sufficient funds for it. Funds are set aside each year. They're pretty modest. It's about $30,000, which doesn't get you very far. We can, as trustees, from time to time, release extra funds from our reserves to acquire objects if we think they are significant enough. And then that is supplemented by the MTG Foundation, which is a private group of benefactors who contribute money for specific one-off purchases. So if you look at the statue outside the MTG building in Napier, and you look at the Paul Dibble statue by the clock tower in Havelock North, they were acquired by the MTG, but funded by the MTG Foundation. The other question which you're asking is, how do we judge what is relevant? And that is, I think, why you have trustees, you have an iwi representative, one from both cities, I'm an independent chair. And people can say, you know, you should buy this, or you should buy that, but some areas, the museum holdings are very well represented. I mean, we have more embroidery in our collection than you can shake a stick at. And we quite often get people who come along and say, my great aunt Millie was a great knitter, would you like some of this? Well, unless it's particularly relevant and valuable, we have to turn that away. So it's a question of judgment.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, it would be remiss of me not to ask this question. But in terms of the new storage facility and internal gutters, and in terms of the intensity of the recent rainfall event, could we just verbally ask our designer, because they will know what rainfall fell, that the capacity is there to cope with that?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, councillor. I will take note of that question. I'm sure Mr. Allen has also taken note of that question. And it's an obviously good point to raise with the constructor.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey.
Tēnā koe te rangasira. Just with the recent floods, how will the museum be in a position to receive or restore taonga that have been unveiled once they've been reconditioned? So I'm aware of such artefacts that have been exposed now that have been hidden for so many years, and there's yet to be a decision. But what, for example, if it was a meeting house and it was a carved meeting house, or a pātaka being a food storage, what position would the museum be in to protect those and house those appropriately?
The short answer is we can't do very much on our own resources. We don't have very much in-house capacity. Almost all our conservation work is sourced out to experts. So I think if you have specific works, specific taonga that do need restoration, by all means, approach the MTG and say, can we get your view on this? But the MTG staff itself are not restorers.
Lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Richard, I can't help but notice that the insurance charge, if I read it correctly, looks extraordinarily good value. And I'm not sure if I'm reading it incorrectly. There's something hidden away. I mean, how much insurance are we getting for that money?
Where's your reference, councillor? Can you give me
It's
a-
on the statement of financial performance.
Yeah.
So page, I don't know what page it is. 16, I think it is. No, I found it. That's down
The
there.
third page, first page of the financials.
Yeah, the first page of the financials. I mean, I'm not disputing it. I'm just trying to understand it. It's because I'd like the name of the insurance company. I think I'll take my house there.
I would have, I mean, the insurance company, I'm not sure of,
That's a
councillor.
mock
but,
question.
I'm still trying to find the reference. I'm on a different document from you, I think.
So that well,
Probably
yeah, so I think, the insurance policies that we have, for the museum are around, for the collection. They form part of a broader suite of insurance policies as the five Hawke's Bay councils as a collective negotiate. The collection policy itself sits with Napier City Council, as the sort of the operators of those facilities.
That's okay. So when the new facility, storage facility, operates, who would be responsible for insurance there? Is it the councils or is it the museum trust or who?
Well, that's one of the things that we have to resolve in the new government. In the new governance one, we're perfectly conscious of it. As you know, we have this very unusual arrangement where Napier bears certain costs and Hastings bears certain other costs. When you get into the new governance model, you're going to have to divide that pot up again. And normally, in the case of other institutions around the country that insure their collections, that insurance cost is borne by the trust. So in the working out the financials for this new governing model, you would have to take that into account, and it wouldn't be a responsibility of either council any longer.
Just through the chair, perhaps at some stage we could just get an update, because it still mystifies me. I mean, it just seems such good value. It just seems unbelievable.
The value of the insurance seems good value.
No, the cost of
the
it.
cost.
Because as I understand it, isn't it about, is it 30 or 40 million?
31 million.
31 million, yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't imagine anywhere. So I just wondered, I don't understand how it's just so affordable. But if the question can't be answered now, maybe it could be sort of put down as
Sure.
something to answer later, at another time.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Corbyn.
A very quick question. How often is the collection revalued?
The collection's revalued every 3 years.
Every
3?
3 years?
Yeah, and then every 5 years there is a full revaluation when we bring in experts from outside Hawke's Bay who come in.
Yep. And you spoke about the collection being added to, but is parts of the collection sold at any time or disposed of at any time?
We do have a de-accession policy, but it's very difficult. Let me explain. We have de-accessioned in the last year, for instance, some bottles containing concentrates of poison, which had been left to the museum and had leaked. They can be de-accessioned pretty easily, but if somebody gives you something to the museum, de-accessioning is quite difficult, and we are not allowed to de-accession by sale. So we can't say, we don't like that painting, we'll flog it off and we'll go and buy a sculpture. So deaccessioning is a very slow process, councillor. The best we can do is find somebody, another institution who might like to take us off our hands. But the legal complications are quite high.
Okay. Just prior to Councillor Dixon, Mr Allen's got a clarification on the insurance.
I believe what you're referring to, Councillor Nixon, is the insurance that's shown as an expense is the trustee's liability insurance that the trust bears. The more substantive insurance for the collection is buried in the management fee that the Napier City Council charges through.
Thank you, and Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. More than happy to move the recommendations. But Richard, thank you very much for the valuable contribution you make to the Working Party. The Working Party hasn't met since November last year for a number of reasons. We're waiting on the final contract to come through from the successful tender as far as the building was concerned. And also Morrison Lowe were working on their governance proceeds. We're wanting to hear from them. So we'll meet sometime in May. I think that's what's planned. So happy for that. And
Thank you. Just before you do that, there is an amendment. There is now a C, which is going to be brought up.
So my apologies. I'd left off a C, which was that the committee receives the Hawke's Bay Museum Trust draft 2024-26 statement of intent. So that's so we capture that as well.
So you happy?
happy.
Yep. And to second that, Councillor Lawson, all in favour? Any against? Happy to move. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for your attendance today. Okay, I'd now like to welcome Mr Wilson, the Financial Controller, to come forward to provide us with the quarterly financial report. Please note that this is up to the 31st of December, and we are now in the end of March, actually the end of a financial year nearly for some. So this is a little bit backdated, but we will be up to schedule for the next meeting, which is on May the 11th. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for that. Let's come in. Just waiting for that to come up on the screen. That's great. We will, as the chair referred to, take you through the December year-to-date quarter. We've also, Mr Allen will then present some slides on the impact of Cyclone Gabrielle from a financial point of view so far, a month and a half in. That will cover some of the funding arrangements that may be possible to claim that, and also what our commitment costs have been through the first month and a half. So that's what we're looking at, because it's kind of hard to reconcile back in December and then what's happened subsequent to. In terms of the accounting result for December, the first 6 months, you can see there's a $9.3 million deficit in terms of $9.5 million deficit in terms of the bottom line there. So $1.1 million is under in terms of the revenue side of it. That's mainly, virtually all driven by the fact that the subsidies and grants work that has been completed has not come into the account. So there's always that timing lag that comes in for work done. We do the work first, then of course we do the invoicing subsequent to. In terms of the operating expenditure here, obviously 6.2 million of that relates to a non-cash depreciation effect on the higher revaluation of assets last year that kicked in. And there's another couple of $1 million which we'll get into in terms of operating costs, actual operating costs themselves. So just looking at the revenue, that $1.1 million. So that's what we've just talked about in terms of the invoicing delay there. I would like to note, however, that in the dashboard, we also added some of those activities that may have been under. So rather than giving you too high a level, it's always a balance between giving you operational type and then activity type, which is a different view. And with those, we had some lower revenues, including the building control fees. Note that with the building control fees, we went back and had a look at the actual number of consents for the first 6 months in the prior year versus the actuals for this year, and the consents have dropped between those 2 years. So we can understand that to a degree. And lower volumes in the transfer station, which was highlighted in that dashboard as well that you will see. Again, we expect that to change somewhat once that goes through. A vastly different picture probably next quarter. In terms of expenditure, now in the dashboard you'll see the full expenditure, including the depreciation effect, which shows quite a difference. What we've done here is taken the non-cash depreciation out just to show what the operational costs that the businesses are incurring, you know, from that side of view. Not trying to hide anything because the depreciation is in the main one. This is just to give you a more balanced view, taking that huge variable out of here. So what you can see there is it's not too badly out until we get to around that December period up there, and that's around $2 million on $65 million, so it's around a 3.4% differential to the budget. And you know, there are a number of activities that are experiencing still inflationary pressure. We've probably all read about the inflationary pressure right through over the commentary in the last 6 to 9 months at least, and that's a continuing issue. Resource constraints are also a factor, and you probably see that in the personnel costs where they're favourable. You think personnel costs being favourable is a good thing. And it can be, but it can't be as well, because it means that you actually there are vacancies there that you haven't filled or that are taking time to fill, which then puts pressure on activities in order to complete, you know, their activities. Also, what we're planning to do through the April period in preparation for the May meeting is to complete a forecast across all activities. So what this will do is hopefully give us a better picture of where we're likely to end up at the financial year end, including what impacts we understand that the cyclone will give us as well. So what we can understand at that point.
That's right, and just sort of the finance team with all of our budget managers had been working through a process of doing a financial forecast to year end just prior to the cyclone. In fact, the day of the cyclone, they're about to wrap that up. So almost throw that away, and we're about to, we'll do that again and get a better view of what the year end position will be.
In terms of the whole of council capital spend, I think I said this last quarter, I don't think I've ever seen a capital spend ahead of budget since I've been here.
No way.
So that's kind of a good thing. The fact is, though, that we're 5.4 ahead of that budget, and that's million. That's primarily driven by the purchase of the land and buildings that were approved but unbudgeted that we raised last time. And also the drinking water program where there was additional spend sought request for budget. So that's kicking in. But having said that, then you look at the BAU projects that are occurring, and they look not too bad. I mean, you'll have some ups and downs. Landfill are one that's a little way behind. I think we were expecting around 4 million by now. That's around $1 million, but that's now picking up because it's underway. You always can have that. When does it start? When a resource consent's issued? All that sort of thing has to get in the right order before you start kicking off with that. So that's now underway. So it'll be just really interesting to see where we're expecting that capital spend finish up when you look at now we've got a Cyclone Gabriel with a whole lot of infrastructure around roading and transport to look at, and how will that affect it going forward. Mr. Allen will speak on that a little bit more shortly. I'll just pass that over to Mr Allen now.
Actually, we might, just, there's a couple of questions from the floor, so
Yes.
I'll just take those
Yep.
first. So, Mayor Sandra.
Kia ora, thank you, through you, Chair. 4.6, I'm just interested in the higher revenue in Toi Toi offset by the lease income from the 340 Heritonga Street. I'm just really interested in how we are capturing that lease, that rental from City Fitness, and it's in the Toi Toi jar. I mean, I'm just like, if in terms of us paying off that building, I see that, you know, why have we done that?
Okay. So rationale for that is, one, we didn't have a cost centre that was around commercial property. And when I boiled it down to the strategic importance of that purchase and its relation to Toi Toi, the fact that it was actually, it's largely funded by the rent that we receive, so it's cost neutral to the Toi Toi activity. So we generate, so there's some financing costs which are a little bit hard, difficult to pull out and identify explicitly within the Toi Toi cost centre, because there's some significant borrowings in relation to the Toi Toi redevelopment works that have happened over the last few years. So buried amongst the Toi Toi debt that we've incurred is the $7.5 million for the purchase of that building. The revenue for that building at the moment is going through that cost centre as well, and largely offsetting each other. So that was the rationale for it, mainly because we didn't actually have another cost centre or an activity that it would fit in this.
I think it's just really important for us to understand actually Toi Toi's income and expenditure in terms of operational budgets as well. You know, like, we don't want to be clouded by thinking that, you know, we've had this much business going through Toi Toi when we know that all of that is rent. So it's just for us to understand that when we highlight it.
And I agree. I think we need to look at the performance of Toi Toi as it is, with excluding that building, because it will could tinge our decision making going forward as well.
Thank you. I'd like to support Chair and Your Worship. I think there's probably coming up soon a time to review Toi Toi as a business entity. I'm certainly not suggesting it right now. I think we've got higher priorities, but it'll be something I'd look forward to capturing and seeing how it is going. My question was regarding depreciation. It's made quite a significant impact on our budgets, this snapshot. Is there a way that we can better align so that we don't have budgets that seem to sit out of sync?
It would be not, yes, we would ideally like to be able to do that. I think one of the issues that we have is when we're setting our budgets around now, each financial year, the revaluation process normally is undertaken right at the end of the financial year. So there is a gap. We do try and factor in a level of revaluation uplift to incorporate into the next year's funding models and depreciation expense budgets. Last year's depreciation uplift in the Three Waters was substantially more than we had anticipated.
Yes, if I may, there's no way you can put, you know, $550 million as a budget, because you don't know that that's going to happen. So you're always going to get, there's a certain amount of unknown factor in that. You can look at what the previous track history is, and that's what we do. We build that into the spreadsheet modelling, but at some point you go, surely there can't be a $550 million uplift, you know, otherwise you're massively out one way or the other. So yeah, it's difficult.
Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 47, the key revenue streams, and I'm reading there, the timing of the budget capital subsidies not yet received for Flaxmere Residential and Whakakotahi. Have we received those, and how long do we normally have to wait for Crown funding to come through?
Yes, we have received the Flaxmere one. And largely it comes down to, generally the payments are reasonably quick, so it's our own internal processes around putting applications in and receive funding. The Waka Kotahi subsidies, generally the turnarounds within a week or two of making the application. So, and that's always aligned to when our spend is incurred. So I think in the first half of this financial year, a little bit slower out of the blocks as far as our spend profile was concerned. Up to December, I think, talking with Mr. Jackson this morning, you know, the summer spend program in the roading space is always more significant, and post-December, a lot of work actually takes place, and generally that's when the transport team catches up with their spend, and the subsidies naturally follow on after that.
Councillor Corbyn.
I'm looking at page 47 as well, and the variances. I'm looking at the building control variance minus 260,000, unfavourable. I'm having trouble putting that into context. Is that 5%, 10%, 20% less than what you would have expected to come in? In fact, I think that context applies to all of these numbers here, and perhaps that's part of the review that the Chair was talking about. But in terms of the building consents, is that, what sort of percent is that from budget?
That's actually a really good point. And something that we need to better reflect in these reports is actually, because they're $260,000 variance when the budget may be 5 or 6 million compared to 260,000.
So it could be insignificant, or
it could be exactly right. So we'll get that information for you. So I don't have that at hand.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. Very helpful information. So, any further questions, comments? No? Okay, so just going back to the recommendations. Oh, right, okay, sorry. Oh, yep.
Right.
Racing ahead.
So we just thought, in preparing this report and the fact that it's to the 6 months, the end of December, and the events that have happened since, there was some delays getting this committee meeting up and running. So there is significant delay, and a major event has happened, which we thought we'd just spend a little bit of time, some commentary in the report that details it. But as far as Cyclone Gabrielle goes and our spend profile, it has had quite a significant impact on what we do, on our allocation of staff time, the imposition of time on staff, what that's meant to business as usual and projects. We talked a little bit earlier just around the reporting for this committee and the need to delay what we were doing in that space. But fundamentally, in a financial sense, in responding from a welfare lens, we've spent just shy of $4 million from the date of the event till this is the most up-to-date information that we've got. We're working with NEMA to claim that back. Not all of that cost will be 100% claimable, but the team are working through and getting that claim together, and we'll work our way through that. That might take a few months to do, and we'll do that in stages as we work our way through it. The emergency reinstatement, just talking with Mr. Jackson this morning, so we haven't got the claim yet for March. Embedded in that 22 million is an expectation that the March claim will be $15 million, and that's on top of what we spent in the 3 weeks or 2 weeks of February. That's at the 93% subsidy rate with the NZTA. So there is still a substantial local share that we need, even at 7% of 22 million is still a reasonable sum of money. And in the context of the balance of this financial year, we've had approval for $45 million of funding at the 94% rate. Forecast from the transport team is that could be closer to $60 million of spend. That we've got comfort around the 45 million being at 94% subsidy rate. Beyond that's a conversation that the team will need to be having with Waka Kotahi around any accelerated subsidy above our base fare rate. So that's in the transport space, by far in the biggest area of where we're spending money and the implications of cost on this organisation. We talked this morning briefly around waste collection. There's a number of costs associated in here around establishing a temporary site. Over $1 million worth of disposal charges through the landfill plus collection costs go into making up that number. and the way that NEMA have structured the funding opportunity for the $15 million allocated makes it very difficult currently to think about whether there's any claim in recovering that 2.6 million. But the team haven't given up. We'll continue to work around that and try and understand ways in which either the policy settings can be adjusted or we can meet some of their criteria. So, to date, 6-7 weeks on, almost $30 million worth of expenditure incurred by council. A large proportion of that is recoverable. There are elements of that are at risk. And really around the funding sources. So in the report, we do detail this, but and from an insurance perspective, material damage, we have a number of claims against assets that have been damaged, most notably the Whirinaki water treatment plant, but then a number of others, Pakawhai Hall, the Omaranui landfill kiosk in Weybridge, and a number of other smaller claims that we'll make through that time. Our deductible in this space is $10,000, so and we expect a claim in excess of about $2 million in this space. We do have our bridges insured for our local share, so that's reasonably unique for councils to do that, but we do. We have a loss limit of $10 million, acknowledging that in this situation we would always receive an accelerated subsidy, so looking at what our local share cover will be. So the team are working through that at the moment. We have loss adjusters on site tomorrow and today working through those claims. With LAP, which is our Local Authority Protection Program, it's a mutual that we belong to. That ensures our 40% share of catastrophe cover for generally underground assets, Three Waters assets. In this event, we don't expect that we will have a claim that will be sufficient enough to breach the threshold required. So this is catastrophe cover. It has a high threshold before you can make a claim. It's a percentage of our total land value based on our rating values. Sits around $2 million. So that's the threshold by which, before we can make a claim, and then our deductible against that is 40% of that number. So, it's a substantial amount of damage that we need to receive before a claim can be made. We don't expect that we'll be making a claim in this event in that area. As I mentioned, Waka Kotahi is a major funder of the damage that we've incurred. To date, it's 93% currently up until our allocated $45 million has been fully consumed, and then after that, conversations will need to be had, and we have no clarity around what an accelerated subsidy will be going into next financial year, which makes budgeting quite challenging. And then with NEMA, costs incurred around welfare, which is around preservation of life and looking after those that are isolated. Those direct costs directly associated with that are 100% funded from NEMA. There are some ancillary costs that will incur around it, supporting that aren't funded by NEMA, but I think a big chunk of that funding that we've identified that we've incurred we'll be making claims against. And some of the bigger ticket items have already had NEMA approval before we went and did the acquisitions, particularly around the fuel solutions that the team pulled together for the Kāweka Ward and Tūtera in particular. And as I mentioned around waste, the current policy settings from NEMA around how we can claim that are making that problematic at this moment, but we haven't given up on either being able to meet those policy settings or having discussions with NEMA and the Ministry for the Environment around those policy settings getting adjusted. So that's sort of a very high overview of where costs we've incurred. I think in the introduction report we do talk about a number of items that we want to bring back in more detail at the next meeting. This will be one of them. We'll have a much better view of what the current financial year landscape looks like. And as I mentioned, a lot of the costs that we've incurred are costs that we'll recover, or in the transport space, even 7% of $60 million is a large sum. We will have savings on transport spend this financial year that gets reallocated, but even that, given when this event happened, a large proportion of the maintenance and renewal work had been undertaken because it generally gets done over the summer months. So there is some underspend that will incur in general work, but it won't be significant. That's a conversation that we have going into next financial year as well.
Thank you, Bruce. Mayor Sandra.
Thank you, through you, Chair. In terms of the Cyclone Gabrielle and the rates remission policy, have we calculated the impact of that on our next financial result?
So from those that have taken up so at the moment it's allocated to those that have had a property that's been red stickered, and for those that have their property with the yellow sticker, they've been invited to request a rate submission for the last quarter. My understanding, talking to the staff this morning, is that we're about $200,000 worth of remissions have been given to date, and there's quite a number of yellow sticker properties that would be able to take up that submission if they're either aware of it or chose to. Not everyone will choose to. And I think probably the bigger, more substantive question for Council Cumming, and the team are working on this at the moment, is actually what are the policy settings going on for next financial year as well and beyond.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bruce, insurance plays a huge role in funding our recovery. I was just wondering if you can very briefly let councillors know the process or who makes the decisions around how much cover to have and where it sits.
Thank you. Good question. So that's something that's run through our risk and assurance committee, and over the last couple of years, it's been a conversation that we've had a number of times because the cost of insurance has been going through the roof. It's cost of insurance is largely driven by two main factors. One's the value of the assets that you're insuring, and through the conversation that we just had around depreciation, we know that the value of our assets are increasing significantly. Insurance premiums almost go up at an equal percentage to that. And we've also been operating in quite a hard market globally around insurances as well, with a number of these extreme weather events that have been happening globally, which ultimately is the market that we play in when we're placing our insurance. So we're part of a Hawke's Bay collective. We go to the market together. Aon is our broker, and in the last couple of years, we've been having conversations with risk and assurance around the extent to which we have cover or not. A good example is the bridge insurance. That was a directive of the Risk and Assurance Committee about 5 years ago to say that's an insurance policy. Now that we know that it's available, that's an insurance policy that we want to put in place. And if we look back, and it was very difficult to see that a claim would have ever been made. Now, in hindsight, it was a good decision. But that's sort of the processes that we work through. Some of the other things, we work our way through trying to understand other opportunities to save money with insurance premiums, because our insurance premiums now cost in excess of $2 million a year. And now, if there are opportunities to structure things differently, so changes we made this last renewal, we removed some assets from the schedule, assets that we knew that were going to be demolished in the near future, here at my house. Others that we sort of had a suite of assets, they're on a rolling renewal cycle anyway, like public toilets. We lost two toilets in this two public toilets in this event at Esk and at Puketapu. So whether that was a good decision or not. But other decisions that the Risk and Assurance Committee are having to grapple with as we work through how to best place our insurance. The other substantive change we made this time around was, rather than insuring all of our assets, that we put a loss limit in place, a collective loss limit across the 5 councils of $600 million. Now that was informed by loss modelling that Aon undertook for us to understand, if we had, and generally these things are modelled off an earthquake event, particularly in a material damage context, because that's where we see most of our damage would be incurred from. The last few weeks have shown us something different, but they are sort of the conversations that I had to inform to the extent to which our insurances are placed.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? No? Happy to move, thank you. And councillor Watkins to second. All in favour? Any against? Nope, moved, thank you. The next was minor items and then also 9 urgent items. Nothing has been added to the meeting. So we now have item 10, which is a recommendation to go into public excluded session to address item 11. Can officers please read out why this is now, why this item will be in public excluded?
Yeah, through the chair, this is to allow without prejudice discussion on a commercial transaction matter.
Thank you. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Dixon and Councillor Nixon, all in favour? Any against? Thank you. Move. Right, we will now move into item 11, but I would like to thank those that have participated and watched the live stream of this meeting, and wish you the best for your remainder of your day. Thank you.